let's move ahead. So for those who do not know me or kind of like watching it for the first time, I'll just give a very brief introduction about myself, probably 30 seconds to 1 minute, and we'll get to the meat of this talk. So I'm Ramsri. I'm currently based out of Hyderabad, India. I've been currently I'm like lead data scientist, and I have about 9+ years of work and startup experience. So across Silicon Valley, Singapore, and India. And most recently, 2 years back, I had like a pre-seed funded startup based out of Singapore called Aurora. We used to do automated assessments, and currently I do AI freelancing and also do some micro SaaS, and I run NLP courses, things like that. So it's a mix of everything. Happy to share everything once we are done with this. And if you want to get to my socials, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything, all those are on ramsri.ai. If you go, you'll see them on the main page. Okay, first things first. So why am I qualified to talk to you about GPT-3? Basically, I built question.ai, and I've been playing around with GPT-3 since launch. And also I built a production app with using it. So already there are 900 signed up users, and I have 12,000 plus MCQs generated. So you can visit question.ai. In one line, you can bring in any text and generate high quality questions, kind of like MCQs that you see here on the screen. So basically I had one slide before this, which is about me and why I'm qualified to build GPT-3. And you can see some of the questions, MCQs that are here. Okay, so what's the agenda for today? I think you can see the agenda as well, right? Great. Probably can mention it in chat if you can see it. I can proceed ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So what is GPT-3? And we'll take one goal because it's broad. We'll take one goal of building a paraphraser. Then we'll see how everything aligns, all the parameters, or how to use GPT-3 to develop that kind of paraphraser. And first thing is we'll see how we can use OpenAI Playground, basically a user interface kind of thing, to develop prompts and understand various parameters and engines that are there. And also, how can you create novel data sets with GPT-3? I think a lesser explored option is actually creating the data sets themselves. I haven't seen many use cases or examples online, but I realized that I could create data sets for my use case on question.ai, or if I'm building a paraphraser, I could build novel data sets as well, new data sets completely generated by GPT-3. And the other thing is zero shot and few shot prompts. So we'll get into everything. Don't worry if you don't understand any of this terminology. And advanced prompting, and how can you go to production with GPT-3? We'll look into all of these things. In rare cases that there's a power cut, you'll go back to waiting room and I'll come back and I'll meet you, don't worry. So what is GPT-3? So we just saw what GPT-3 stands for, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And it's a language model trained by OpenAI to predict the next word. So we'll just see it in short, what it is. But essentially, the input is text and the output is text. So you give some kind of prompt that is input text, and it generates some output text that is the response. But first of all, what is a language model? So assume that, so here I took our famous movie of Batman. So I took some lines from there. So essentially, if you have some context, let's say here, as a child in Gotham City, Bruce Wayne falls down the dry well and is attacked by a swarm of bats, developing a dash. If you have this context, you can answer with something like maybe a fear or frightedness or something like that, something related to that, right? So, yeah, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so the main thing to remember is that the longer context that you have, the better you get at predicting the next word. So simply what this means is that If you have a very big language model that can process a lot of text, then whatever you try to generate will make sense. Simply if I just give you this prompt that developing a dash, then you don't know what to fill in. You might get like 10,000 possibilities that you can fill in with. But if I give you more context, then you get narrowed down, and now you can predict much better word. Similarly, all that GPT-3 is basically it's trained on this long text where you are supposed to predict the next word, and that's all it is trained on. And one main thing to remember is that the better or the longer text that you can process, then the better your predictions and completions are, simply like we humans do. And what is prompt? Basically, prompt is just input text to GPT-3. For example, if you just say the earth revolves around the and give that to GPT-3, that's your input prompt. And whatever GPT-3 fills in, that's the response. So in this case, probably if it fills with sun, the earth revolves around the sun, then basically you have the response that it filled in with sun. So prompt is the input text and response is the output text. Now that we have these basics clear, what is prompt engineering? Like a lot of people talk about GPT-3 prompt engineering. So you might be aware of like a very famous meme or tweet or LinkedIn post that became viral in the tech circles at least, which is to replace programmers with robots. Like clients will have to accurately describe what they want, so we are safe. So if you take this example, the robot here is GPT-3, and the clients who accurately describe what they want. So this phrase accurately describe is basically prompt. And GPT-3 can do many things, but you need to instruct it very well to get the desired output. And simply mastering that capability to give very good, clear instructions to GPT-3. So basically giving very good, high quality prompts, mastering that is prompt engineering. So nothing fancy. Now GPT-3 playground. So we'll go over the GPT-3 playground, and I'll show you all the presets and base demo, everything. So we already got to the meaty point where we go on to the GPT-3 web app and see, use the playground and generate some things. Let's get there. Okay, can you guys see the welcome to OpenAI?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. You guys are so awesome that everyone's just unmuting and telling me the things and muting back, because I've seen presentations where someone has kept the mute, like they did not mute themselves, and there's a lot of noise, etc. But great job. Yeah. So once you go on to openai.com, beta.openai.com, first, if you have never applied to OpenAI, you need to apply to OpenAI to get access. So it's not open access to everybody. You need to go through a small application process, and after that, you'll get access to this. So simply, this is the homepage we are starting with, beta.openai.com. And there are some starting with basics, etc. But we'll get to the crux of this, basically playground. So I'm clicking on the playground. So this is here where the magic happens, where you try out several prompts, the input texts, etc., and get some response back. And then once you're confident with the prompt and responses and everything, you go ahead and export it as code. And then you build some kind of SaaS or any other application or internal application with it. First, let's do one thing. So for those who have absolutely no clue, there's already some what GPT-3 calls or OpenAI calls as presets. What presets means, simply they have some example prompts. So here are the example prompts. Let's take a small thing. Let's just summarize for second grader. So this is an example prompt that I just clicked and loaded. So prompt goes like this. My second grader asked me what this passage means, and there's some passage. So basically some block of text, and I rephrased it for him in plain language a second grader can understand. So this is the prompt input text. Now, if you are human reading this, you expect that, okay, I need to fill in some text here such that I need to write some simplified version of these 5 or 10 lines. That's exactly what GPT-3 also kind of understands and delivers. So when we click on generate here at the bottom, let's see. Great. So you can see that it generated some text which is very simple and understandable for a second grader. So one small thing to remember is you can adapt the complexity here by saying fifth grader or however it is, you can adapt that complexity. But we'll see all those things. But simply put, right now you gave some prompt and GPT-3 filled in some text, which is kind of like a simple version of the summary. Now let's go on to the right side of this. This is where all the parameters are. So there are several parameters that we'll go through and I'll intuitively explain how to use them. But before that, one main thing, engine. So what is engine? So basically GPT-3 trained 4 different language models. So one is DaVinci, which is the highest, more capable, as well as the more costliest version, which is DaVinci. Then comes Curie, Babbage, and Ada. So these are basically the 4 types of engine. And usually what I do is, if GPT-3 is capable to do certain thing or not, to know that I try out with DaVinci. But since it's the most costliest one, once I have something working, I try out with Curie or Babbage and see if it is similar to DaVinci, that I can use it for production purpose or for my use case. I go ahead with that as well. Now let's understand the parameters intuitively one by one. The next thing is response length. So basically, you have this text and you are asking GPT-3 to generate some text. Now, how long should I generate? That's the first question GPT-3 asks, right? So you are asking it to generate to just 100 tokens. So 100 tokens. So now since we got to the point of tokens, let's go back and understand what tokens are. Let's see. 1 second. So there is beta.openai.com tokenizer. Again, let's go to that link. So this is the tokenizer. So essentially, if I have something like my name is Ramsri Gautam. So if I have like something like my name is Ramsri Gautam, and you can see that it is tokenized. So if you take space as a token, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. But essentially, AI algorithms are such that if you cannot store all the possible words that you get in a dictionary or vocabulary, right? So whenever it encounters something that it cannot understand, then GPT-3 or any other transformer-based algorithms, they try to create sub-tokens out of it. So essentially, this is created to Rams is 1 token, RI is 1 token, G is 1 token. So essentially, there are 8 tokens here instead of 5 words. So there's no direct mapping. So if you have 500 words, that might come out to be maybe like 800 or 1000 tokens, however it is. So tokens and words have some rough estimation that you can go back and forth. but it is not exactly the same. So that is one thing that you need to understand. Now, let's go back to our playground. Let's take our simple demo. Let's take a simple demo. Okay, so I've told you about the examples, right? So basically they are presets that OpenAI has already given with several examples that you can use and get an idea of what OpenAI can do, but you can design your own prompt. So if you see, I have my presets. These are all the prompts that I designed either for question.ai or I'm trying out some paraphraser, and I have them as well. So essentially whatever prompt that you create, you can store that as well using this click on save button. Now let's understand the right parameters again. So engine we got, and response length is the one that I told how many tokens to fill in. Now, when you're deploying production apps, one thing to remember is that you need to create response length accordingly. By that I mean, if it's just fill in the blank that I am expecting GPT-3 to fill in maybe 2 or 3 words, I keep a maximum response length of 10 or something like that. That's it. But whereas if you're summarizing some block of text, maybe I'll keep response length as 200 or something because I want the summary in 50 words or 100 words, etc. And this is very crucial because you get billed based on this. So if you have a long response length for something like fill in the blank, and if it has 100 tokens, so every time in your billing, you get billed for 100 tokens. So you need to remember that you need to give the response length, which is how much to fill in, depending on the input prompt and your expected output, whatever is the context for your use case. Now stop sequence. Let's understand what stop sequence is. Now the stop sequence that I have here is enter. Why do I have that? Because I know that it's just fill in the blank and I just need to give one word here and some full stop or something like that. And whenever it tries to goes to the next line, stop it there. Otherwise, if I just remove the stop sequence and I keep the response length, let's say 400, let me click on generate. And what's going to happen is, see, it generated a lot of text, unnecessary text. And of course, it is repeating itself because we don't have other parameters set. That's why it's repeating. But as you can see, if I don't have any constraints, it will go and generate as much as it want. Now, maybe it costed me 1 or 2 cents, but that's okay. I'm just showing you example. So the easiest way is you give a stop sequence. That means here, once it generated sun, it generates a new line, enter, right? So you are asking it to stop the generation once you hit enter. Why is this stop sequence important? Because if you have something like a chatbot where you have customer chatbot, something like that, what you can do is whenever you want chatbot to fill in some text, you can give chatbot colon, it will generate its response. Again, it will generate customer colon and generate something, but you don't want that. So you give stop sequence as customer colon. So only the chatbot response is generated, and maybe you give that response like 50 or 100 tokens or even smaller. And once it generates a next sequence, customer colon, you stop it right there because you've given the stop sequence. Now to understand, let's just refresh this because I'll tell you one very interesting and cool thing. Basically, in order to get this enter symbol, it's very hard. I usually need to go and I go to a Wikipedia page and copy that Unicode and then paste it here. Nevertheless, let's keep continuing. So you understood what engine is. Let's come back to temperature. You understood what engine is, what response length is, and you know how to use stop sequence. Top P. So to understand top P, let's do one thing, which is at the very bottom, I have show probabilities. Now I'm keeping that as full spectrum and I'm clicking on generate. So it also gave the probabilities. So what does that mean? The earth revolves around then what happened to GPT-3 was it got almost 4 or 5 options with probabilities that it can fill in. That means sun was the 90% probable option that it could think of. Then you have capital sun again 6%, but you have moon, axis, \n, new line character. These also have some probability, which means during the generation part, it could have even picked moon with, of course, with very less probability of 0.15%, but it could have even picked that up, right? So top P means pick everything that is available here. If you're generating random sequences, that comes with temperature, etc., you can pick one of these things as well. Simply put, if you increase the temperature, instead of sun, it can even pick moon because you are increasing the randomness of its picking. Now, since we have temperature 0.5, which is stable, it usually picks the top one. But main thing to remember here is, remember this part where there is show probabilities. Now let's come to top P. So what happens if you change top P to maybe like 0.96? I'm unable to get it to 0.96, but I can change it here. But nevertheless, let's say I chose 0.96 as top P. Then simply GPT-3 will use collectively only these two, because 91 plus 6, 97. Okay, if you give 97, it will just use these two and pick randomly from these two. If I increase to 97.8 or something like that, then sun, moon, axis, all these things come into play. So if you want to generate something very deterministic, then you can reduce this top P. So this, if you reduce top P, then it decreases the diversity. So it will always predict every time the same output or similar output. So if you're generating creative content, go for high top P. That means because you are generating creative content, you want every possible option to be randomly picked. Then you generate something very creative and output. But let's say you're doing summarization. So you don't want to generate random words. You want to rather generate words, but from the fixed set that is already available within your input text, right? So in that case, you keep top P slightly less because you don't need to pick even the high probable words. And let's understand these things. Let's switch off these probabilities. And frequency penalty and presence penalty. These two are somewhat related. I'll just explain them in one line. Now, if you, here you have Earth revolves around the. Suppose you don't want the GPT-3 model to again use any of these words again. That means it should completely generate new words, not Earth, not revolves again. Then you increase the penalty, frequency penalty and presence penalty. If you increase them and click on generate, then even if you give high response length, usually it doesn't generate again words involving Earth, revolves, or anything like this. But if you reduce the penalty and just keep longer length, it can go and generate again. You have seen previously, right? The Earth revolves around the sun and it generated that 100 times. If you want to avoid that, simply what you do is increase the frequency penalty and presence penalty. Now, presence penalty and frequency penalty, one is frequency penalty. One is presence penalty based on what is already present. You don't want Earth revolves again to come in the text. Now, other thing is frequency penalty. If you increase that, what happens is, now we generate Earth revolves around the sun. And if you don't want again the generated text, that is sun, to be repeated again in the text, then you increase the frequency penalty or presence penalty, one of those. I'm not too sure. You need to play around, but either of them, they just make sure that you generate newer text that is not already present in the generated ones. Now we got almost all the things. Okay, let's do best of. So what is best of? If any of you are aware of text decoding strategies, so you have greedy decoding, beam search, and other things, right? So best of is something simply like beam search. Now let me explain again what that is, in the sense that if you have a longer text like Earth revolves around the sun and is the home to us, something like that. Sorry, home to us. So sun, you have seen that it has probability of 0.9. Then and might have probability of 0.6, something like that. If you keep best of 3, what happens is GPT-3 calculates generates 3 different sentences. Then it calculates the probability of 0.9 multiplied by 0.6, whatever it is, and this comes out with some score, right? So it will generate 3 completely different generations, and it will pick the one with the highest probability. So if you keep best of 3, that's what it does. But if you keep best of 5, it generates 5 and picks the highest probability path and gives that text as the output if you give best of 5. So that's best of. And temperature is somewhat similar to top P, where if you want let's say if you want GPT-3 to generate sun every single time, you keep temperature to 0, because that is the highest probability one, and it will always keep picking sun because that is the highest probability one. But if you want to see more diversity, then you increase temperature. So this, you can assume temperature as well as top P as some kind of diversity control or creativeness control, where if you dial down both of these, then it will always generate the same thing around the sun, around the sun, around the sun all the time. But if you increase this to the maximum, sometimes it could generate around the moon, around the axis, and fill it with something else. So engine, temperature, response length, stop sequences. So we almost got everything except inject start text and inject restart text. So these parameters are mostly useful if you are building something like chatbot, because chatbot goes like this. You have customer, some text, then chatbot, some text, and again customer, some text. And let's say this is the input that you have. If you are a chatbot, what do you want to do? You want to add something like chatbot and add the ideal response for this customer and end there, right? That's simply what you want to do. So instead of you adding chatbot colon manually, you can give this as the inject start text, where you can give chatbot colon. Okay, so you can give inject start text as chatbot colon. So what simply happens is that even if you give this as the prompt, before passing this prompt, it will append chatbot colon and pass that prompt to GPT-3. But usually I don't use this, because if you are a coder yourself, all these things, chatbot colon, prefix, and end text, all these things you can add it with our string, Python strings itself. So I don't use this much. But if you are building some kind of purely automated GPT-3 prompt itself without any other intermediate pre-processing, you can use this. So what is this inject restart text? Simply once chatbot is generated, again it will add customer to the end, and it will. So this is like a chatbot application where it added chatbot, it generated the response for this, and again it generated customer colon. It didn't generate, but we added start text as chatbot and end text as customer. So it appended customer again. So if I am interacting with the GPT-3 chatbot, I see that, okay, I asked some question, then it generated some answer. Again, it is prompting me customer colon, please fill in your question if you have anything. So that's essentially what it is doing. Now the great thing is that we almost understood all these parameters, which is pretty much the crux of this. Now we'll go on to more interesting things. Let me again share back the presentation. Okay. So I assume that you can see the GPT-3 playground presentation, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. So we understood different engines, and you can go to this page and see the pricing. But simply put, I'll say this: for 1,000 tokens, or maybe like 500 words or 600 words, you need to pay 6 cents for DaVinci, 0.6 cents. Sorry, yeah, 6 cents for DaVinci, and 1/10 of that, which is 0.6 cents for Curie, and similarly for the rest of them. But simply a one-liner is that towards the tokens, both your prompt as well as the response is collected towards pricing. By that I mean, let's say if you want to summarize some 500 words thing, you give 500 words and maybe it summarizes to 200 words. So you give 500 words and you get a response of 200 words. So total 700 words, which might come out to, let's say, 1,500 tokens. So automatically, just to summarize that part of text with DaVinci, you get 6 cents, you get charged 6 cents, etc. So we'll come into how to avoid getting overcharged, or how to use smart prompts, etc. in the coming sections. But what I'm trying to say is that always, if you can do something with Curie model, please try and do that. If not, then go for DaVinci only for like smaller prompts. We have seen these things, and now let's get to the real interesting part, where we'll run through the code and we'll generate a paraphrase data set. This is very interesting because you will see that GPT-3 automatically creates high quality paraphrases. For example, if you have worked, mute again. Okay, cool. So we'll create high quality paraphrase data sets. If you worked with any dataset creation teams, what happens is that there are some high quality, let's say, linguistic people, etc., who will create paraphrases, etc. It's a very complex process. You will see how you can use GPT-3 to be able to do this. Let's go directly to our playground again. And let's see, paraphrase dataset creation. Okay. So paraphrase dataset creation, again, I've played around with the parameters, and I've finalized these things, but don't mind, I shared all the code with you. I will be sharing again as well. All this code and everything will be available to you, even the UI with Streamlit that we are going to see. But nevertheless, let's see this. So my goal is that I want to generate high quality paraphrase data sets. What does that mean? I want some original sentence and I want paraphrased version of the same sentence generated. And I want to generate both of these things automatically with GPT-3. So this is a prompt that I created, which starts with, I'm a diverse paraphrasing expert. I will generate many random pairs of original and paraphrase sentences. And I'm giving some prompt. Here are a few, and I'm showing an example. This is the original one, which is, once a group of frogs was roaming around the forest in search of water. And I have a paraphrase. A gang of frogs was roaming around the woods in search of water once more. Now I'm prompting with original. That means GPT-3 should ideally generate some other original sentence, regardless of this, frogs and water. and it should also generate the paraphrase. Now, if you remember here, I have the stop sequence again. I have stop sequence as original, because what happens is that GPT-3 is going to repeat this pattern, original paraphrase, and take that pattern continuously. Now I want to stop. Whenever I encounter the next original. Let's just run and see, everything will be evident to you. So I'm just running this, click on generate. I think I might have played around with the parameters and changed it, but nothing to worry here, because we have everything stored in okay, our code as well. Let's get back to this, but I'm going to share the code, and we will see it directly in Google Colab Notebook. Yeah, let me do that. So basically, I was playing around continuously, and I think I might have changed the parameters. Okay, now you can see the code. Okay, one small thing that I wanted to mention you is that basically you can click on view code, and you get the whole code in Python that you can copy. Once you have mastered this playground and something is working, you can click on this Python code, and now you can execute that here. So I'm opening the Google Colab Notebook that I created for the paraphraser. So I'm just connecting here. Now, one thing is that I'm going to go and collect my OpenAI key. So I copied the OpenAI key. I've shared this Colab Notebook with you as well, and I'll share it again. So no need to worry. So basically, I installed OpenAI here, and I'm clicking on, I'm just running these cells. I didn't run the first cell. So here I'm just entering the OpenAI key with the get pass, because I don't want you to see the key. I mean, nevertheless, I think I can go ahead and delete the key as well, but just for easiness, I'm using this. So I'm using the same prompt that we have seen previously. I'm a diverse paraphrasing expert, and I will generate many random pairs of original and paraphrase sentences. Okay, let's click on responses. Okay, let's run one more. Okay, so you can see that which of the following is not a cause of bird extinction. What are some causes of bird extinction? Okay, let me see. I don't think that's a high quality one. His intentions were to give the gift of life. His intention was to bestow a gift of life. Okay, you can see that a paraphrase has been generated. His intentions were to give the gift of life, was to bestow a gift of life. Now let's run the Streamlit dataset UI. So everything will be evident once you see the Streamlit UI. Right now it's very clear. Sorry, right now it's not very clear. But let me run this and it will be completely clear for you. Meanwhile, I think we have someone who raised their hand. Amir, can you go ahead and ask the question?
Yeah, actually, this Colab notebook we cannot run until we have OpenAI API access, right?
That is true. Unfortunately, that is true. You need OpenAI access. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So here I've written a Streamlit file, and the interesting thing is that now we run Streamlit completely with Colab, because I'm using local tunnel. And in a moment, you will see how you can generate some paraphrase datasets. I'm clicking on the open link. Okay. So let's click on generate paraphrases. Okay. I did not give the OpenAI key. I need to give it again. So in here, I need to give the OpenAI key. And now I can click on generate paraphrases. I'm going to the mall. I'm going to the shopping mall. Not a great paraphrase, but let's generate one more. The girl who was crying at the top of her lungs collapsed on the floor. The girl cried out at the top of her lungs and then crumpled to the ground. Pretty decent paraphrase, right? So I'm going to click on add to the database. And now I'm going to generate one more paraphrase. On a cold winter day, a hunter found a sleeping deer. On a frigid winter day, a hunter came across a dozing deer. Great. I think it's amazing paraphrase. Again, I can add to the database. So if you see back here, sorry. Okay. Okay, if you see, all we have is one example of once a group of frogs was roaming around the forest, and a gang of frogs. That was a paraphrase that we gave. But it is generating examples that are not seen in the original input, right? So something related to deer, cold winter. So these are completely new paraphrases that are generated by the OpenAI itself. Let's click on one more. She's a beautiful woman with long hair. She's a lovely woman with long, dark hair. Again, great paraphrase. So if you see, like you can see all the paraphrases that we generate, and simply what's happening here is that we created a tool where someone can click a button, generate a paraphrase. If it's good, they can add it to the database. Now here I'm just adding it to the database within the Streamlit and showing it as a pandas data frame. But in the same code, you can go and post this in your maybe like MongoDB or any other database where you collect these paraphrases, or you can just create a CSV file and keep appending all these paraphrases to that. So to the CSV file, you just keep appending all the paraphrases, and maybe after like 1 hour or so, you have generated maybe like 100 or 50 or 100 high quality paraphrases. And if you give the same tool to multiple people, they can go ahead and generate paraphrases on the fly, completely random paraphrases that they have never seen. And then you can use this to train other transformer models, maybe like T5 transformer model or something like that. And you can, if you don't want to use GPT-3 and all those tokenization cost and GPT-3 costs, you can collect high quality paraphrases, go and train T5 and use the T5 model in production, etc. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that you can generate high quality data sets with just GPT-3 prompts itself. Cool. So we saw how we can generate paraphrase data sets with GPT-3, and I'll send you the code later and you can use the prompt. And similarly, you can generate other data sets as well. For example, for question.ai, I created true or false data sets. For example, let's say the boy is lazy or the boy is active. Such data sets could be created, or even complex data sets like that, longer sentences of true or false, negation as well as original sentence can be created with GPT-3, completely with GPT-3. And with Streamlit UI, you can create some kind of curation as well to add them to the database. Now, one thing is, let's take a small detour and connect with the community. So I'll put yourself into breakout rooms of 5 people each. And what are we going to do? Basically, it will be like 7 to 10 minutes. You can interact with each other. So just introduce yourself, your name, where you're joining from, and your current professional details like student or working or entrepreneur, and your exposure to NLP so far, And other thing is share one social media profile of yours, maybe like Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, anything that you want others to connect with. And remember one main thing, in the breakout rooms, whatever chat you send, even if it shows for everyone, it is going to go to only to the people in the breakout rooms. So only those 5 people who are is in each breakout room, you will share these things among each other. So share your social media profile there. But for the rest of them, feel free to turn your video on if you are in a situation where you can turn your video on and just interact with each other. And I'm going to share this slide even into the breakout room so you know what to talk about. So let me create the breakout rooms for you. And one thing is, if you're shy and don't want to be in the breakout room, don't worry. You'll get a prompt to join the breakout room or not. You are randomly assigned, but if you don't want to be part of it, you can stay in the main room. We'll continue our presentation once everyone gets back to the breakout room. So for like 10 minutes, we'll just stay idle here. But I would highly encourage you to go out to the breakout rooms, know for other people, and form relationships, and just know about each other professionally, and share your social media profile so that you get 3 or 4 new audience that you can connect with. Great. Great. I think we are back. So please go ahead, Krishna.
Hey, hi Ram. Thank you for arranging this session first. Thanks a lot. Ram, with respect to the current open AI, right? I have one main question. You in the initial start of the session, you played around on the OpenAI playground, right? In order to do that by changing different parameters, is it chargeable or it's a non-chargeable one?
It's a chargeable one. So every time I'm playing with OpenAI in the playground, tokens are being counted and I'm being charged. Yes.
Okay. Now, in that case, if we use GPT-3 code explicitly instead of playground, if we using Python framework, and in order to identify the parameters wisely, so will that be chargeable apart from the playground if we do it via Python framework?
Yeah. So even in Python framework, you need to give your code. So basically, it's built to your account itself. So everything is chargeable, both in Python and Playground.
Okay. And in any identification of the parameters, right, for identifying the best parameters by trading off with bias and variance in order to identify the parameters and hyperparameters, we do kind of a cross validation and other stuff. So with keeping pricing in mind and identifying the parameters very wisely, any other suggestion?
So, I mean, one thing is that there is that part of doing the hyperparameter search in a grid or something like that. But beyond that, what I would say is that if you get a very strong sense of the problem that you're solving, then you kind of narrow down onto what you want on those hyperparameters. And more or less, since those hyperparameters are such that there's randomness in the generation and everything, I wouldn't necessarily say that you can go ahead and just put those parameters and expect if you run 100 runs, maybe those 100 runs will give different validation, accuracies, etc. in text generation, right? Especially. So those things are there. So main thing that I would say is that once you get a strong sense of what you want to solve, and you know how those hyperparameters help you achieve that, you get into the zone of what those hyperparameters are by playing around. And then once you're there, you kind of pretty much fix there and slightly fine tune by maybe 1%, 2% here and there. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sanjay, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Ramshri. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, thank you, Ramshri. So firstly, thanks for your time and hosting this event. So it has been really very much insightful. So I basically have two queries. So the first thing is that in order for me to use this application, I just need to know the context of how it handles complex queries. So let's say you have a query where it has, let's say like an example of this one. So girl, this is a beautiful girl. She has a dark hair. What if it has she are a beautiful girl, and there's a spelling mistake. Instead of dark, there is a spelling mistake for the dark. And will the GPT-3 try to find out this and solve the issues of singular or plural and also the spelling mistakes?
So you can prompt GPT-3 to kind of act like Grammarly as well. So there are, if you Google prompt examples for grammar correction, there are definitely few, and even you can play around with GPT-3. So specifically speaking, you can just say that convert this sentence into standard American English. And there's one GPT-3 given prompt within their examples as well. I believe that there is this prompt to correct the grammar and generate standard American or standard British sentence. Yeah.
So here, does it actually charge me extra for these corrections?
So you get billed for your original tokens, which is she, are, whatever spelling mistake you have that sentence, right? That comes out to 10 tokens. You're charged for 10 tokens, plus you have your original prompt, right? Which is convert the following sentence into standard American English. If that's 20 tokens, then you have 30 tokens, 20 plus your wrong sentence. Then the corrected sentence is 10 tokens again. So you have 20 plus 10 plus 10, 40 tokens.
Got it. Okay. And the second and my last query is that right now, among the parameters, we're able to choose different engines, right? So can we make it dynamic? So based on the query which we provide, okay, for this query, it's not very complex. So we need not need the latest engine for that, and we can use the old engine. Is it possible here to do in that way?
Okay. So basically, you need to route it through the code programmatically itself, in the sense that you can choose the engine just by switching like parameter with DaVinci to Curie, you change the engine. But depending on your query, either you have some kind of classifier that you have built on your own to route that to whether DaVinci or Curie or any of those engine, you need to build some kind of classifier if you want, or based on some programmatic logic, you can route it. Otherwise, there's no easy way to automatically route it. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Ramsey. That's it from my side.
So one thing before we proceed on to the next questions, I know that few hands are raised, but we just have like a couple of more minutes of talk, and I think more interesting examples are present. So let me show them quickly, and then I'll take the questions again in 10 to 15 minutes. No worries, I'll answer all your questions before leaving the talk. Let's proceed ahead with the talk. Yeah. Okay, so one main thing to remember is zero shot and few shot prompts. What does that even mean? So let me explain with a very simple example. If you just say, paraphrase this sentence, and you give a sentence, and without showing any examples, if you ask GPT-3 to automatically paraphrase it or give instructions, then that's zero shot. Essentially, it's like, translate this sentence, I'm going to school. Translate this sentence to French, I'm going to school. You're not providing any examples of translation pairs, that there's an English translation pair and there's French. You're not providing any such examples. If you just do try to, without any examples, if you're asking GPT-3 to perform some task, that's zero shot. And few shot is essentially you show some examples. English, French, you give some translation examples, and then you ask GPT-3 to translate a new English sentence. So that's few shot. Few shot could mean you might have one example or two examples or multiple examples as well. Now let's go and see some zero shot and few shot demo in playground as well as in code. Let's directly do with code because that will be easier for you. One thing to say is that these examples will be very interesting for you. And second point to remember is that the more examples you give, those things add up to your tokens. So you need to pay the price for that. So essentially remember that if you're going for few shot, you pay a higher price. So if you can do something with zero shot, you should go ahead and attempt it. If not, go to few shot. Let's go and see our code directly. Okay, so whenever you copy the prompt directly from our playground, you can view the code and copy it. But what happens is that in code, you need to give dynamically, right? Because here I created a prompt for zero shot, which is my goal is to paraphrase this sentence. Once a group of frogs was roaming around the forest in search of water. And my prompt goes like this. I'm a paraphrasing expert. I will rewrite any given sentence with a diverse choice of words, preserving the meaning. And the original sentence is, I'm dynamically appending the sentence from here and rewrite colon, I ask it to generate, and I have some parameters. But when you copy from our OpenAI GPT-3, directly it will add, instead of this %s, it will have this one. So you need to just change it a little bit. That's what I'm trying to do here. Let's run this. Okay. Once a group of frogs were roaming around the forest in search of water, let's run it again, because oftentimes what happens is that since these are, there are a lot of parameters like top P, temperature, etc. You need to run multiple times. Okay. Now you got a very good example because, okay, let's see. Once a group of frogs was roaming around the forest in search of water. That's the original sentence. And the translated sentence was, the paraphrase sentence is, at one point, a bunch of frogs went walking around the forest in search of water. It's a very good paraphrase in the sense that group of frogs is replaced with bunch of frogs, roaming is replaced with went walking, once is replaced with at one point. And you can get more and more creative if you write, I will rewrite any given sentence with a diverse choice of words, preserving the meaning. If you change this prompt to be more and more creative, you'll get more diversity here. So here, I have not given any example of how paraphrase looks like. That means I have not given an example, original sentence and paraphrase. I'm directly asking GPT-3 that with this prompt that I'm a paraphrasing expert. I will rewrite any given sentence with different choice of words. This is the original sentence and this is the paraphrased, and I did not give an example. Automatically GPT-3 generated this as a paraphrase. So this is an example of zero shot where you gave absolutely no examples. Let's look at few shot example as well. Let me close this, because if I have a lot of active sessions with Colab, I'll get an error by saying that I need to close. Few shot, great. After like few shot, once we are done with few shot, again we'll take some questions, and we have some more interesting things in the very end, but we'll wrap up soon. I know that it's already slightly late for you. But one great thing is that I prepared so much content to deliver, and I know that, okay, even with half the content, I am almost there by delivering 1.5 hour lecture. That's great. So I can prepare more focused miniature content and run these often. I'll get to the questions in a bit once we run with. Why are we on? Okay, so we should be on few short example. Okay. Okay, so I'm running a few short example here. Essentially, I'm writing it here. I'm a diverse paraphraser. I'll rewrite the original sentence with a completely different choice of words. And I gave one example, which is the frogs example that I told you, original paraphrase. And then again, I gave a new sentence and asked to paraphrase it. And the new sentence, you can see it here. I'll show it to you in a bit. Okay. So the new sentence that I gave was 4 private astronauts launched to orbit by Elon Musk's SpaceX returned to Earth Sunday evening, splashing down into the ocean off the coast after a 3-day mission. That's been paraphrased as 4 private astronauts have been successful with their orbit around Earth by Elon Musk's SpaceX and have now landed back on the east coast of the United States. Very good paraphrase. Maybe like Florida, etc. is not mentioned again, but it's a paraphrase with also some shortening, and it's to the point in the sense that it's not generating any wrong content from the original phrase. That's what I'm trying to say. Here I'm calling it few short because I gave one example that once a group of frogs were roaming around the forest in search of water, and I gave completely different example of Elon Musk, and I asked it to paraphrase by learning that one example. And as I mentioned previously, the longer your prompt is, the more bill you get because of the tokens. So this comes, here's where we have few short and 0 short examples. Now let me take some questions from the participants. I will call out the name. Maybe Karthik already answered. Mohammed Arsalan, can you please go ahead?
Hi Ramsri, I'm audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me over. So I worked with GPT-3 for prompt engineering in my company, but we came across this issue called token issues. Like maximum tokens we have is 2048, I guess.
Right.
So so is there any way we can work around, or we can increase the token limit?
So great question. The short answer, I'll give 2 answers. The short answer is that the answer is no, which is it's almost equivalent to 1500 words. By that I mean 2048 tokens is approximately 1500 words, which is equivalent to, which is to mention that along with your prompt text, whatever your response text is, that combined should be within 1500 words. That's the hard limit. You cannot go beyond that. Now to solve that issue, what I would say is that one, there are 2 issues with this. You cannot operate on a longer context level. Second thing is that you get billed for 1500 tokens, almost like even if you're doing something simple as summarization, it's almost 6 cents with the top model. So what I usually recommend is, if you want to do any downstream task, it could be like you're generating some questions from it, or you're generating some maybe like keywords from it or something like that. What I always say is that instead of giving 1500 words directly, first use any long form or like transformer model, etc., to summarize it. Maybe like you can use Hugging Face transformer model to summarize the 1500 words to probably 200 words or something like that, and you can give that to the GPT-3 model as a downstream task to generate keywords, or if I'm generating questions as well, or just generating some other thing, downstream task on top of that, operate on those summarized text of 200 words or 250 words. That will save on cost as well as all these tokens and other issues. But if you want to summarize longer things, then you need to go for like other models that handle. Use that in the pipeline to generate a summary and use that. or generate key points or things like that, then use that.
Thank you so much. It was very informative. And may I know like which language model is good for translating the code, programming languages from one to another?
Translating the code. So I think OpenAI also has like Codex, right? So that's one option, but I haven't personally played around with translating code from one language to other. So I won't say that I'm the right person to give you expert advice. Yeah.
No, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much for your time, Ramsey.
Please go ahead, Adiman Kirti. Sorry, Madheshwaran. Sorry if I got your name wrong, but please go ahead, Adi. Yeah.
Thank you, Ramshri. So I am a big fan of your work and I appreciate you taking time to doing this. So my question is sort of related to the previous question. So I try to build an application where you can give an English text and it will generate SQL queries. So the solution that you gave before of summarizing the prompt doesn't apply because you can't summarize the prompt of English text and the answer being the SQL query. So in such cases, how do you account for handling all? So in order to handle all the edge cases, I ended up having to give more prompts. So every time I have to give all this because it doesn't save the state of the prompt. So every prompt is treated as new and I have to give all these edge cases every time. So how would you go about in dealing with this kind of situation?
Great question. So one thing is that what I would say is that in OpenAI Playground, if you actually see there are some presets. Let me try to find it. Parse unstructured data, I guess. Let me just, okay. So basically there's some text and you kind of create some kind of thing. So my answer to you is that why can't we generate SQL queries in the sense that if you give description of what you want to do and you have SQL query which is select something from X, etc. That's a very valid prompt for OpenAI to take. By that I mean you have pairs of these things, some task, descriptive task, SQL query, descriptive task, SQL query. I think that's a very that's very much in the capabilities of OpenAI to be able to do that. So I'm not sure what you mean by not being able to clearly get that. And the second thing is you talked about state not preserving, right? So one interesting way that I would look at it is if you think about chatbot, and if you have like an OpenAI chatbot, let's say there's user, and then you have chatbot response and user and chatbot response. Then you have user question again and chatbot response. If you have 3 examples of user and chatbot responses previously, whatever is going to get generated by the chat by OpenAI GPT-3 is not independent of just the question that the user asked previously. If the user mentioned that he lives in so and so country and he wants to book a flight, then chatbot will take into account even the previous context. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that you can create a query in such that you append your current query to previous query and you can build some kind of structure level of maybe like 10 or 15 previous references. It could be SQL queries in tandem that are going around, and you can attempt to do that actually. So every time it's like a chatbot discussion where a user is running, asking for SQL things to do, and it gets appended to what has been previously done. And GPT-3 internally takes care of giving that preference element to what should it keep in the back of the mind as context from previous things, as well as answer the current query or convert the current description to SQL. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramshri. Thanks for your response.
Ramshri, I think I have a question, extension to the same point, right? Like what my problem was like it's extension of few shot learning, right? Like say, for example, if we have 1,000 examples to train for, However, there is a limit of 2048 as input, right? Like, how do you take all the 2000 examples as a training data or a few shot for the few shot learning?
So one thing is that OpenAI also has fine tuning. So essentially, instead of trying to do few shot or single shot, if you go to OpenAI, actually there is fine tuning as well, which is in beta. But I need to warn you that basically, if you have 1000 examples, maybe 100 or such examples are supported. You can, let's say you have paraphrasing. So you can give 100 paraphrasing examples and fine tune the GPT-3 model, pre-fine tune it and keep it ready so that you have a high quality paraphraser, which is almost equivalent to giving these 100 examples previously as few shot learning. Plus, the only thing is that it is much faster and you don't need to give all those tokens are not counted. They are only counted once, but at the same time, there is increased pricing. By that, I mean, if your regular 1000 tokens are X, probably this is again 10X with fine tuning, but fine tuning is the short answer. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I am one more question. Right. So you talked about prompt engineering, right? So we work, I work for a financial data provider company. So, and the problem is there is more of business, very niche business thing, right? So how do you give such kind of information to GPT-3 model? Say, for example, I give, like, say, there is a use case of us extracting something called as PRT note, which is very, very specific to the company, right? So, or the business. So how does OpenAI understand such kind of things, right?
So one thing is that if it's a lingo created by you in your company, perhaps OpenAI doesn't have much context.
Yes.
But if it's a general financial lingo, assume that you are building something for marketers or financiers.
Okay.
Then what I would say is that although we assume that it's too niche, my argument would be that OpenAI has seen so much text such that if you start your prompt with something like, I am a financial advisor working in like Big Five firm and I deliver reports, if you establish yourself, then OpenAI gets into, it's almost like you are narrowing down the niche for OpenAI to generate. And I would argue to the point that if it's a generic thing, then you can, with good prompting, you can push OpenAI in the director to think like a pro marketer or pro financial advisor and generate only those related contexts and texts. Yeah. But
thanks
if
for your
lingo that you created in your company, then probably not. Yeah.
Thanks again for that.
Yeah. Senthil, please go ahead.
Ramsey, it's a very great program. That I have two questions. Number one, suppose if I have a text from news article, the sentence is actually a piece from news, and I want the paraphrase to be in the same style. Say there are so many styles of writing, right? You have the formal, you have creative, you have so many other styles. How can I control the style of the paraphrase, and also how can I control the domain of the paraphrase?
Great. So I've shown one example in the beginning where if you ask it to summarize for the second grader, it will generate something in that zone. And similarly, if you ask it for like a high school student, it will summarize. Similarly, what I'm trying to say is that right now I just said I'm a diverse paraphraser and that's the prompt that I gave. But if you force it to be like I'm an expert paraphraser who takes second grade sentences and polish them and convert it into more refined professional sentence. If you give more context to it, establish what you want to do, and whatever you mentioned, right? Creative, explorative, or authoritative, the tone, you also need to establish the tone of what you want in the prompt itself. And once you're able to do that, you will get a decent output.
Can I fine tune according to my requirement for any formal or creative or news or in any academic or any kind of text? Can we fine tune it?
Yes. So fine tuning has limit maybe like 100 examples or 200 examples, but fine tuning is a great way to get higher quality output if that's what you're aiming for. Yes. So you can have your experts create, maybe if you're building something for law firms, let's say,
Okay.
paraphrasing in law firms, then you need to get I'm a lawyer who is an expert paraphraser, and then you give your examples accordingly. Then GPT-3 will get more and more in line with that and follow the format that you have. Yeah.
Okay. The second question is, can we do the same thing for other languages except English? Say, can we develop a paraphraser for Tamil or Hindi or Telugu?
Great question. So one thing is that although GPT-3 has seen quite a lot of text, most of the examples of translation are from English to French or English to other languages that are readable in English, something similar to that English, right? So although GPT-3 is not advertised to be exclusively English because it has seen a lot of languages, but primarily a lot of text context that's it's trained on and what's available on the internet is English. So
Okay.
I would say short answer is I would not bank on GPT-3 to be able to build a Telugu or Tamil paraphraser. I would rather do one thing, which is collect high quality paraphrases somehow, either the way I showed in GPT-3, etc. Do high quality translation and then use multilingual T5 to be able to do this paraphrasing.
No, this is basically monolingual, only Telugu to Telugu, Tamil to Tamil. I'm not talking about translation, only paraphrasing. So
Yes,
T5 will be the answer in that case.
Multilingual T5 will be the answer. Why I'm saying multilingual is because you don't have, because you need to have a tokenizer that is just for particular language.
Correct.
So even if you're training Telugu to Telugu paraphraser, if you have a T5 model that has only Telugu tokens, great. You can go ahead and just train that. But there's nothing like that, right? So you need to take the multilingual T5 itself and just you give Telugu tokens and Telugu tokens as output, paraphrase as output. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Ramshree, for the great answer.
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
Ajay, please go ahead.
Hi, Gautam. Thanks for the session. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
So my question is, so when you say we said like I'm a paraphrasing expert or something, right? So paraphrase is one of the applications of a GPT-3 or language model, right? So my question is whether the GPT-3 added that as part of like simplifying the tuning to be a paraphrase, or is it something really understanding from the GPT-3 in a normal way? Because we can't use something like I'm a language expert and write something, right? For example, something which is not an application of GPT-3 or a language model.
So that prompt is kind of like just self-generated by me. So technically speaking, you can say that I'm a language expert and I write very polished sentences, and then whatever you start with, that will be very structured and more professionally written. So technically speaking, yes, whatever the few lines that you give at the top, GPT-3 is prompted to think in the direction and fill the response accordingly. Yeah.
So, for example, just like a thought, so can we return a different dialogue? For example, we take something in Telugu or English, like a list of dialogues in the movies, like a movie script, and we say, and some in a creative way, create a new dialogue that gives some ideas to the person. Do you think that's
absolutely possible? So you can start with, I'm a script writer, screenwriter, and I write, let's say, like action genre movies, and here are a few dialogues between the main characters XYZ, X, and then you have Y fill in. Totally possible to do. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that should be in the training? It is already being seen by the GPT-3 in its training?
Definitely. So GPT-3 has processed so much text that almost all internet available text is kind of being seen, and whatever you are asking for definitely is been seen. Yeah.
Okay. That's it from my side. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, okay. So we are getting to the, let's do one final thing. Although I have a lot of content planned, since we are nearing the end of the session, I will finish the 1 or 2 slides that I have, and then we'll get back to exclusive question and answers. Let me do that and just give me almost like 5 minutes and I'll answer all your questions. Yeah. Actually, I'm amazed that if I can pull off with just half the slides this much, I can run so many sessions. That's what I was thinking. Great. Okay, you can go through the phrasal paraphraser as well later. Essentially, probably for Senthil as well, I think it's very useful. Where if you want to just replace absolutely stunning with something like really gorgeous, etc., I have examples created for that as well. And this has very strong use case in copywriting. And there's a collab notebook for this, so you can go ahead and run that. I'm not going to bore you with that. Phrasal paraphraser. And there's an advanced prompt design. I think I'll push it for later in the interest of the time. And with GPT-3, you can not just do text generation. Of course, you can do even classification and semantic search API is also available. So you can build semantic search or search engines with GPT-3, and you can do fine tuning as well. And taking GPT-3 app to production. So you need to apply something called as content filter. Simply in your prompt generated response, there shouldn't be any unsafe or any other offensive content. You need to apply extra layer if you want to take it to production. And the other thing is, because you have the text output response, GPT-3 may finish the sentence abruptly. So just have NLTK to basically filter through that. And usually what I'm saying is that if I'm generating true or false, etc., I route it through Lambda, because you can also do multi-threading with AWS Lambda, and you can call GPT-3 in parallel. By that I mean, if you have 10 sentences and you're paraphrasing something, you don't need to you can take every sentence and paraphrase that independently, right? So you can take those 10 sentences using multi-threading. You can call GPT-3 API with those 10 sentences independently, collect back the results and show the results. So I've discussed few things here. I'm running in the interest of the hour, but I just wanted to mention one thing, that I am running a 4-week NLP course starting next week itself, that runs for 4 hours. Simply from Python developer to you can transform into a data scientist. I won't take much of your time, but if anyone wants to register, they can just go onto this link, ramsey.ai/NLP, and you can enroll, and classes start from next week, 16 hours of live session. And I'll stop here and take all your questions. Great. Let me get back to the chat and call out the names. Participants, okay. Balaji, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm saying I was just looking at the productionizing. I mean, when we have this transformer models, right, taking into productionizing, and also the explainable AI. I think, for example, whatever prediction we do, right? So, I mean, and I think how we gonna give it, that is a big challenge I think we have, right? So, how do you? Think from GPT-3 perspective. I mean, mainly for taking to production, and just from explainable AI perspective, how do you say it actually? They say for a classification example.
Can you repeat the last sentence? Sorry, I missed it.
No. Basically, I think my question is more about taking GPT-3 to production. Okay, and I think say example, we have a classification case. Okay, I mean, especially my question is about transformer models, which is huge. Okay, so how do you? I mean, there are various distillation techniques, various techniques. Other things. I mean, that we take it right. So I mean, GPT-3 is another thing, and which I want to explore. So I mean, what are the general tips when you take it to productionization? I think with huge models like this is one of the transformer models, right? So that's one generic question.
Got it. So one thing is, when it comes to GPT-3, we are not doing anything for productionizing it. Rather, OpenAI has figured out the way to productionize it, and they have given us API access to it, and we are charged per token itself. To be very honest, I think that's great. Even though the prices are very high for the API models, etc., I personally believe to be able to give open access and such high quality thing, I am okay in that sense. But short answer, GPT-3, they productionize it themselves. So we don't need to worry about that. When it comes to transformer models, productionizing ourselves, so there are few techniques. One thing that you mentioned is distillation. So you can run the model and distillized version of that model. You can host them on there. Now, if you really need like extremely fast inference, then GPU is the way to go, but they are expensive as well. So the ideal way is see if you can use distillized version as well as quantization techniques to bring down the model size, and then see how does the CPU inference look like. If the CPU inference of the transform models are like in operable range, then you can go ahead and deploy them. And one easy way is Google Cloud Run, because Google Cloud Run doesn't, unlike other serverless apps, Google Cloud Run keeps your app running all the time, because otherwise you have cold start issues with Lambda or things like that. So if I want to productionize usually lightweight transformer based, even T5 base models, my usual choice is going for like Google Cloud Run and running them from there. And the other thing is that there are a lot of optimizations that people have developed on the transformer model, and also specifically on each and every transformer model has some optimizations included. For example, if you have T5 model, if you have BART, if you have BERT model, the optimizations also kind of like change slightly. So Hugging Face has some, they have figured out how to optimize each and every model, and they provide API access as well. So if you are doing something lightweight, what I would say is that usually I go with Hugging Face API and I integrate that for MVPs, demos, and all these things, because they have already taken care of all those things. Even for production use cases, Hugging Face also offers an API with production support starting at like $199 for one model, and for $599 you have 5 models that you can deploy. Simple and short answer is, unless you have AWS or Google Cloud credits, 10K, 100K, or whatever you got from your startup, unless you have that, going with Hugging Face, or there are similar companies like NLPcloud.io, which takes care of the MLOps part completely. That's a cheaper option and hassle-free option if you're going independently, unless you have credits and MLOps teams on your own. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Just one more follow-up question. You touched about the amount of it. So I'm just currently exploring about that in GCP and trying out few options with right? So when we go, when we go about that, I think we need to do the model something, right? So and then we need to just run the pipeline and just redeploy or do whatever. That's the main purpose of MLOps. So in that case, I think with the transformer models and all this thing, right? I'm just trying to look at working on some particular framework. I'm just trying to look at Qflow and other open source things. Okay. So and this, I think with simple models, I think we have some repositories and things. And with huge models, right? I think it's a big challenge actually. And explainable AI is one of the another thing. Okay. So without the thing, there's no point of just doing a bit project or other things, right? So that is something which strikes me. Okay. So what's your take on that, and what's some guidance on that?
So, I mean, explainable AI is a very important concept for us. Now, the thing is that mostly it comes for like classification models, but if you have like text generation models, then you have an expected text and there is a curator who will accept it or not. So it's taken care in that sense where you have human in the loop AI for text generation. But if you have text classification, then definitely you have explainable AI problems. Now, two ways is if you're just going the regular transformer based route, then there are explainable AI libraries that are developed just like BERT, BERT-Viz, and you have Lime and Sharp, SHAP, I guess, for all like explainability things. So one thing is you can go with specifically, and also Echo is ECCO. I think it's by Jay Alamar for explainable AI for GPT-2, why it generated some things like that. So you need to go with a specific model that can explain your transformer model, whether it's an encoder or decoder or encoder-decoder based model. That's one way. And the second thing is if you're going with GPT-3 and purely like a classification, you can as well do it in single shot, in the sense that why is this classification? That's one. And also explanation. You can train with that with prompt engineering. And every time you give, let's say, one sentence, and it generates two things. One is sentiment negative explanation, because somebody is crying or somebody was hurt, things like that. So you can prompt in that sense and attempt to do that. That's one way if you want to take the completely GPT-3 route, or if you want to take the transformer route, then you already have these different libraries catering to each. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Sure. Do we have any more questions? I think Senthil asked, so I'm lowering his hand, and Balaji also I'm lowering his hand. Does anyone have any more questions, by the way? I know that a lot of them have asked in the chat some questions, but unfortunately there's chat, there's participant, there's a lot for me to take care of. So sorry if I missed answering some questions in the chat, but if you want to show up in voice and ask me, I can go ahead and answer. If you have no questions, then pretty much we have come to the end of the session. So you can feel free to leave. I'll just wait for probably 15-20 minutes. So whoever wants to interact just on a personal level or just talk about anything related to this area, you're free to like chat with me and open. Otherwise, pretty much I would say that we are done with the technical side of the session. So everyone's free to leave if they have other things to do. And if anyone wants to catch up for a random discussion, please do stay. Thank you.